When they had that drug bust the other week, we were one of the first people they called up just for us to do more patrols.
Tonight, Calgary votes to defund its police. How the city's Bear Clan patrol is preparing.
If we keep going at the rate we are, we will be in a deficit. We are in a deficit.
And the price tag for trying to protect Nunavummiut from COVID-19. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. In what is being called a day of action for Anishinaabe and Black lives, a demonstration took place just blocks away from Parliament Hill. Jamie Pashagumskum brings us this from Ottawa.
Thanks, Winnipeg. I'm at the corner of Nicholas Street and Laurier Avenue. And as you can see, they have the area completely blocked off and traffic is backed way up. Now, this is a demonstration by a coalition of Black activists and Indigenous land defenders, Algonquin land defenders. Now, I spoke with an Algonquin land defender earlier. Here's what they had to say.
This is it. We've had it. We've had it from the injunctions weaponized all across Canada. We've had it against Black lives being taken every other month, be it here or other places in Canada. We've had it with us being killed with wellness checks and things designed to keep us safe. This is it. We've had it.
The purpose of this demonstration is to pressure government to address land defense and violence towards Black and Indigenous people, both across Canada, but also specifically here in Ottawa. Among their list of demands, they're asking for a freeze to the Ottawa police budget. They want police off disputed Indigenous lands, and they're asking for an end to racism in the healthcare system. I spoke with another activist. Here's what they had to say.
We live in a racist municipal city, we live in a racist province, and we live in a racist country that needs to acknowledge that Black and Indigenous lives do matter, and that things that we're asking for are not considerations or recommendations. These are things that need to be taken place. Our demands are things that need to happen, and we will not take no for an answer, clearly.
The mood of the land defenders is peaceful, but the Ottawa drivers caught in the traffic jam are upset. As for the demonstrators, they're planning more speeches and musical performances by local artists. The Algonquin land defenders say they are occupying Algonquin territory, and this occupation, they say, is going to last for the next 24 hours. Back to you, Winnipeg.
Well, the violence in Nova Scotia over Mi'kmaq moderate livelihood fisheries has subsided. Negotiations with the federal government to resolve the issue once and for all appear to be touch and go. Here to tell us more is the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Minister, Bernadette Jordan. Minister Jordan, thanks for being with us. During Wednesday's Fisheries Committee meeting, you committed to upholding Mi'kmaq treaty rights, but you also asked for patience. 21 years after the Marshall decision, how much longer should Mi'kmaq be patient for?
Well, I will say that, we've been working very diligently to make sure that we get some agreements in place with the Mi'kmaq. It's extremely important to me that we make sure that we implement, that we work with the First Nations to implement that treaty right. I'm continuing to work with the chiefs of the nations to find the path forward. This is something that you're right, it has been 21 years. We have made incremental progress over that time, but a lot more needs to be done. So it's something that I am absolutely committed to making sure that we move forward on.
Since 2017, your government has been pressing what are called rights reconciliation agreements, which demand that Mi'kmaq not fish under their treaty right for the length of the deals. How does asking communities to set aside their treaty rights have anything to do with implementing the Marshall decision?
Well, I would say that, no one's asking anyone to give up their rights. What we're asking is that we work in partnership, that we support First Nations with their efforts. We've always been willing to communicate and work with them to find the best way forward. This is not, as you know, an easy file. This is something that has been ongoing for a number of years. It's complex. There's a lot of different things that need to happen in order to make sure that these agreements are in place. And we're going to continue to work with and listen to the First Nations to make sure that we are able to get to a place where those treaty rights are implemented.
One solution that has been proposed is a Mi'kmaq-led fisheries authority to help manage fishing stocks. Is that something that's on the table?
I can't speak to the negotiations and what's being discussed at the negotiating table. I will say that we are in active conversations with a number of the bands in the area to make sure that we are moving forward in a positive way. I will say that we are having discussions around a lot of different things that are important not only to First Nations but also to communities that are impacted or are a part of these fisheries, and those are conversations that we will continue to have.
DFO statement on the 13th of November suggested that treaty fishing in St. Peter's Bay is in, quote, excess of moderate livelihood fishing proposals. Mi'kmaq in the area deny this. What proof does DFO have of excessive fishing?
So we have a lot of very reliable information from our officers on the ground that there are a number of traps that is reaching a concerning level, and considering it's a very small area, it's a very condensed area. When there is a high concentration of traps in a particular area, it raises concerns regarding impacts on the stocks, and this is also true for the commercial sector. But I want to be clear, we know that First Nations have that right to fish. We are going to work with them to make sure they implement it. But conservation has to underpin everything we do. And we have to make sure that we address concerns when they are raised with regards to the amount of traps in an area.
You've said DFO conservation officers have to enforce the law without political interference, that they're like police. So why not amend the Fisheries Act to recognize these treaties and allow livelihood fishing?
I would say that last year, we actually amended the Fisheries Act to make sure that we included Indigenous knowledge in the Fisheries Act. That is something that is a positive step forward. We're making sure that we're working with First Nations to not only implement their treaty right, but to make sure that there's understanding at all levels on what treaty rights mean. And this is a huge ability for us all as Canadians to learn, to understand what it means to be a treaty people. And I think that, we are working extremely hard to make sure that not only that we implement the right that First Nations have, but also that we're educating people as to what those rights mean.
Minister Jordan, we'll have to leave it there, but do appreciate you taking some time for us here.
Okay.
Well, we'd like to hear what you think about the ongoing discussions over a moderate livelihood fishery. Here's how you can continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on our website, aptnnews.ca. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube to share your thoughts. The final report is out into sexual harassment and abuse at the RCMP. And its author says a toxic culture prevails within the force. Among Michael Bastarak's findings, misogynistic and homophobic attitudes are tolerated amongst RCMP members and leaders. He says changes at this point cannot come from within the force. They must be initiated from external sources. Of the nearly 3,100 claims that were made, more than 2,300 women were compensated by the government. The final figure, more than $137 million. Well, Calgary City Council has voted to defund its police services. What does that mean for the Indigenous population? Tamara Pimentel asked the city's chapter of the Bear Clan Patrol.
Well, somebody's home.
Calgary's Bear Clan Patrol has been around for 1 year, and they're quickly becoming more and more essential to the community. Gets Deranger with the clan says they have grown a positive relationship with Calgary police.
They know who we are and what we do, and they're really supportive of us. When they had that drug bust the other week, we were one of the first people they called up just for us to do more patrols.
Now Calgary has voted to defund its police by possibly $20 million. That money would go towards social programs and outreach services to reduce mental health calls and support those with addictions. John Orr with the Calgary Police Association wrote a statement saying cutting an already tight budget can do more harm than good. He states, "We are already stretched thin, and our staffing numbers are inadequate to provide the level of service that Calgarians deserve and expect." For the Bear Clan, Deranger says the budget cut could have a negative effect on the Indigenous community. or it can be an opportunity for growth.
It is scary because we really don't know where this is going to take us. The system right now is not geared really to help us. And that's just the sad reality. But as we enter into these new waters, there is potential for the growth. There's potential for this to fall apart, but there's potential for us to move forward together.
Regardless of what happens, Duranje says the Bear Clan hopes that in the future it'll expand support to the community by getting its members first aid training and create more programs for things like food security. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Calgary.
Time now to step aside for a quick break, but still to come, the financial and social costs of the pandemic in Nunavut.
It's the cost of if we get an outbreak in communities. That cost is, we don't know what that cost would be.
Welcome back. With COVID-19 cases on the rise, Nunavut is now in the grip of the pandemic. Nunavut have had measures in place since March, and some of those measures are expensive. In part two of our perspectives on Nunavut's COVID-19 fight, Kent Driscoll takes a look at the cost to Nunavut, both financial and social.
Nunavut has taken unprecedented steps to keep COVID-19 out of the territory as long as they have. Unprecedented steps mean unprecedented costs.
If we keep going at the rate we are, we will be in a deficit. We are in a deficit. And the two biggest expenditures we are having is the airlines and its isolation hubs. So they're the two biggest drains, especially the isolation hubs.
In February, Nunavut had a projected deficit of $30 million. Then came COVID. That led to $49 million in unbudgeted spending. The travel hubs, where residents must spend 2 weeks in isolation before returning to Nunavut, had cost over $5 million by June. That's a price Nunavut's premier is willing to pay.
We can't afford not to have isolation down there, not in terms of, I'm not even talking financial costs. It's the cost of if we get an outbreak in communities. That cost is, we don't know what that cost would be, not financially, but medically and health-wise.
It was a massive step, and as I'm sure you know, Kent, and not a economical step either. But when you're sitting there and you're weighing people's lives, and you're looking at, a fiscal situation, not saying by any stretch of the imagination that we handed, or I was handed a blank check by any stretch. I also have my finance hat that I have to be responsible for as well. But I think very early on, we decided as a cabinet to just follow the best medical advice available.
Dr. Michael Patterson is Nunavut's Chief Public Health Officer. He's the one giving that best medical advice.
Could see what was happening in other jurisdictions when they'd had a sudden influx of travelers. We knew that there were a lot of Nunavummiut in the south who, because of what was happening in the other jurisdictions and the closures and everything that was happening across the country or in most of the country, they wanted, understandably, to return home.
Those hubs have a social cost as well. See how you feel after spending 2 weeks in the same hotel room.
It's not the financial hardship, it's that your freedom of mobility is restricted. You're there, you're in isolation. You can go out at certain times, but even then you are making sure that you're isolated. And I have heard it's hard, and I know it would be hard. I know people that went through. It's hard to go through, but it's a lot of people saying it's a price that has to be paid for us to keep Nunavut safe.
Yeah, the first week is easy, relatively easy. It's the second week when boredom starts to set in and you feel like you've seen the same food days on end and those sorts of circumstances. And there's only so many shows that any one person can binge on Netflix. It really starts to wear on people, and it's understandable that loss of autonomy, the loss of control, you can only take that for so long.
Many Nunavut students use school lunch programs. When Nunavut schools closed, so did those programs.
And one of the ripple effects between this, when the school closed down, was the breakfast program or the lunch programs that we had not really anticipated. We had thought about it, but we weren't sure exactly how much of an impact it would have. And we did do our best to try to get the food out. And there was a lot of volunteers in the communities that stepped up to the plate to make sure that the children that needed to be fed did have a source of food.
Short term, the hubs are a medical benefit. Long term, many treatments commonly available in the south are being delayed for Nunavummiut. That will eventually be another cost.
Delays in screening for cancer and delays in screening for tuberculosis and other diseases may lead to other deaths, other harms from a medical point of view. That's a cost or an impact that will take some time to tally.
Maybe the biggest cost? Things Nunavummiut took for granted can't happen like they used to.
I'm sure you've heard stories. I hear stories very regularly of people not able to attend the birth of a grandchild or funerals. Like people are still having babies. People are still passing away. Families aren't able to mourn together or celebrate together in ways that we have for our entire lives. It's really changed the perspective on really recognizing how important that human contact is.
Financial, medical, and social costs. Those are the prices Nunavummiut are paying to protect themselves from COVID-19. And with some luck, maybe Christmas 2021 will look like Christmas 2019 and not 2020. Ken Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
We're all hoping, Kent. Time to step aside for one more quick break, and then coming up, a Canadian Emmy Award winner wants you to pony up with some cash. We'll tell you why after the break.
And I'm going to match you dollar for dollar up to $25,000. So that is a lot of money we can raise for an incredibly deserving faculty.
Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. This from the shores of Slave Lake, Alberta. This photo comes to us from Eric Wilson. Eric, we'd like to see an updated photo in the coming weeks when the lake is frozen over. Keep those pictures coming. And we'd like to see more great pictures from our viewers. You can send those photos to share@aptn.ca, and your picture could be our next photo of the day. Time now to take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, +5 with showers for St. John's, 11 with showers in Halifax. -4 with snow in Nain, 2 below with snow in Happy Valley, Goose Bay. 14 above with showers for Montreal, +5 and rain in Chibougamau. 14 in Toronto, +6 with the chance of snow in Sault Ste. Marie. -2 and flurries for Thunder Bay, 6 below and snow in Sioux Lookout. -14 in Churchill, 10 below for God's Lake. -7 and snow in Winnipeg, 9 below in Brandon and Dauphin. -12 in Regina, -13 for Saskatoon. -13 in Uranium City, 12 below for Buffalo Narrows. Over to northern Alberta, -17 in High Level, -9 for Fort McMurray. +2 in Lethbridge, -4 in Edmonton. +8 in Vancouver with showers, 5 above in Kamloops. -18 in Fort Nelson, 1 below with snow in Prince George. -27 in Old Crow, 34 below in Dawson. -22 and snow for Yellowknife, -20 for Wrigley. -10 with snow in Sax Harbor, snow and 17 below for Colville Lake. -22 in Chesterfield and Whale Cove, 17 below for Arviette. -21 in Arctic Bay and Igloo Lake. It was a brutal crime in the mid-90s. Saskatchewan farmer Joel Dolph was murdered. 2 Indigenous sisters and their young cousin were convicted, but only one of them confessed. So why is he free while the women are still in prison? In this week's APTN Investigates, John Murray and Holly Moore dig in. Here's a quick preview of part 1, where John Murray and a third sister visit Dolph's old homestead and recall what happened that night.
Kizakus First Nation. A Soto community, about 4 hours east of Saskatoon. Joe Dolph's farm was 2 miles up the hill from the reserve. It's long gone, but we met Zerlina Quezons here in the summer of 2020.
It was a dirt road leading up to the house, and I don't know, he lived here by himself apparently. Yeah, this is where it happened, yeah. And like I said, this was the gravel road, and it was all lawn, nice, taken care of. Beyond the tree there was a greenhouse. It was a 1-story house, and there was a garage attached to it. Like, it was quite a big house.
February 25th, 1993. That night is a vivid memory for her, even more than 25 years later.
Yeah, 11 o'clock, yeah. It was shortly after because we were watching TV and Academy Awards was on. He said, we're going, somebody's going to come pick us up. And I said, don't go, you know. I feel something bad's going to happen, you know, stay home with me. Yeah. And
part 1 of A Life Sentence will be aired right here after the news tomorrow night. Now here's Todd Lamoran to tell us what will be on tonight's episode of Nation to Nation.
Hello, I'm Todd Lamoran, and here's what's on Nation to Nation tonight. I talked to Manitoba Métis Federation President David Chartrand about whether the Métis National Council is dead. This following 3 provinces, the Ontario, Alberta and Saskatchewan Métis Nations, forming their own tri-council. Chartrand also speaks about his relationship with the current Manitoba Premier as the most troubled in history. Also, I speak to Gary Vidal. He's the conservative critic of Indigenous Services. He'll talk about Minister Mark Miller's 1 year as the head of that department. That's coming up shortly after the national news.
And Todd's about 3 minutes away from now. Toronto-born actor and co-creator of the hit show Schitt's Creek is asking for donations to the University of Alberta's Faculty of Native Studies. Daniel Levy completed the university's online Indigenous Canada course. The classes are available free and teach about Indigenous history and contemporary issues in Canada.
And we just finished week 13 of the Indigenous Canada course, and I am urging all of you to donate if you can to the faculty, and I am going to match you dollar for dollar up to $25,000. So that is a lot of money we can raise for an incredibly deserving faculty.
So donate now. Dan's giving his dad Eugene a run for the money for my favorite levy. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. For the very latest, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. Stick around. Todd Lamoran is next with Nation to Nation. Have a great night.